The General People Conference commemorates its 39th anniversary amid shattered political scene. United Nations Security Council accuses Houthi rebels again of blocking peace efforts in Yemen. Houthi rebels continue their war against Yemeni youth and deform innocent childhood. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. The General People's Congress, the symbol of political moderation, is commemorating its 39th anniversary, since it was founded back in 24 August 1982. It anchored stability and prosperity in the country. The following report looks back at the most important stages of this pioneering party.
3 months only passed since the young leader, Ali Abdullah Saleh, held the president office. Since day one, he was confronted with all military upheavals that would have shaken the roots of Yemen. There was a military coup and a state of division inside the military institution. Yemen, at that time, was going to a new way of bloodshed and loss of democracy that swept over 4 previous presidents. The young leader faced all these difficulties with a strong heart. Not only a brave heart, but also a decisiveness to build a stable regime based on the national unity and on ending the internal conflicts that load the new democracy. Passing through the coup, Yemen in the time of Ali Abdullah Saleh faced another hardship, the civil war between the North and the South in 1979. This hardship, coupled with a state of weakness in the army that was used by the southern part of the country, which had a leg over through Soviet arms and through ideology. Kuwait mediated for unity. It succeeded in holding a constituent congress to unite all Yemenis, and all relations between the two parts were normalized. The army was then his point of consideration. The leader, Ali Abdullah Saleh, started to make reforms inside the military institution according to a national doctrine that will serve the national interests of Yemen. As to the political side, the late leader began a project that aimed at formulating a national covenant. This national covenant would have resulted in an authentic integrated national way of thought that would have sided out all foreign interference and would have coped with modernity. The covenant, in addition, would have cherished national unity of thought to build a country for democracy, justice and equality. Unity in Yemen was indeed achieved, and a unified national front was formed to represent all priorities and principles. This national front was named the General Public Conference, which preserved the statehood and provided stability in Yemen. This pioneer experience is the base over which all Yemenis were grouped together, in which, regretfully, was smashed out and obliterated by Houthi rebels' practices that overshadowed the glorious past of Yemen.
The United Nations officials confirmed the new special envoy to Yemen, Mr. Hans Granberg, will assume his responsibilities by the 5th of next month. Granberg of Sweden was appointed as UN Special Envoy to Yemen after Martin Griffiths, who has been appointed as Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. The new envoy served since 2019 as ambassador of the European Union to Yemen and has over 20 years of experience in international affairs, including working in conflict resolution, negotiation and mediation, with focus on the Middle East. The UN Security Council in its session on Yemen accused Houthi rebels for blocking peace efforts. The Council members added that Houthi rebels are responsible for the failure to implement the 4-point plan presented by the Yemeni parties. This plan includes immediate ceasefire, reopening of Sana'a airport, easing restrictions on Hodeidah port, and starting face-to-face political negotiations.
The United Nations Security Council again held a special session on Yemen. It's imperative to resume an inclusive Yemeni-led political process to reach a negotiated solution to the conflict. said Khalid Khairi, Assistant Secretary General for Middle East, Asia and Pacific, referring to the 2015 peace plan, which called for a nation ceasefire, reopening Sana'a Airport, the easing of restrictions on fuel and goods flowing through Hodeidah Port, and the resumption of face-to-face political negotiations. Mr. Khairi said the Houthis continue to make the opening of Hodeidah ports and Sana'a Airport, as well as on the ending of what they call the aggression and occupation, conditions of their renewed participation in the political process. Meanwhile, military activity continues to ebb and flow, said Mr. Khairi, with sporadic fighting observed in Al Jawf and Taiz. Ma'rib remains the key strategic focus. Mr. Khairi called on the Houthis rebels to completely and immediately cease such attempts to achieve territorial gains by force. Turning to the issue of fuel supply, Mr. Khairi said the only 3 commercial fuel vessels were given clearance to berth at Hodeidah port since July. Cooking gas shortages have pushed wait times to 1 month for refilling empty cylinders. He pressed all parties to prioritize civilian needs and abstain from weaponizing the economy. On a different note, Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of the United Nations International Children Emergency Fund, UNICEF, acknowledged that little has changed since her last briefing on the situation 2 years ago. Each day, the violence and destruction wreak havoc on the lives of children and their families, she stressed. In 2021, 1.6 million children have been internally displaced due to the violence, she said, notably in Hodeidah and Ma'rib, while essential health, sanitation and education services are incredibly fragile and on the brink of total collapse, according to her. In Yemen, 1 child dies every 10 minutes from preventable causes, including malnutrition and vaccine-preventable diseases, she added. 2 million children are out of school in 1 in 6 schools can no longer be used. 2/3 of teachers haven't received a regular salary for 4 years due to the conflict. Having experienced or witnessed horrific violence, children will carry physical and emotional scars for their entire lives. Being a child in Yemen is the stuff of nightmares, the UNICEF chief added. War overshadows everything, said Martin Griffiths, briefing the Council for the first time in his capacity as Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. The offensive in Ma'rib province and clashes among nearly 50 other front lines have reportedly killed or injured more than 1,200,000 civilians, as collapsing public services deprive people of clean water, sanitation, education and healthcare, and cholera, COVID-19 spread freely under such conditions. With 20 million in need of humanitarian assistance and protection, a fragile economy is pushing the country to the brink, he said. 5 million people are one step away from succumbing to famine and the diseases that go with it, while 10 million more are right behind them. Famine is not just a food problem, it's a symptom of much deeper collapse, Griffith warned. People are starving not because there is no food, but because they cannot afford it. The Under-Secretary General called for an end and immediate implementation of a definitive ceasefire, which would give desperate civilians a break and create the space needed to address the drivers of the crisis. In the end, beyond slogans and political point scoring, if the international community is serious about bringing peace to Yemen, there needs to be a strict strategy to counter the arrogance and bullying of the Houthi militia and force them to accept all peace proposals. Only then peace can see way in Yemen.
Turning to France now, sources in Hodeidah said that Houthi militia shelled people's houses into Haita with heavy mortar. The sources added the militia opened their machine guns toward the city, causing panic and fear among people. The tribe of Murad refused the initiative given by the Houthi rebels to the Omani delegation over the situation in Ma'rib. In a statement, the tribe leaders confirmed that the Houthi initiative is trying to persuade some of Ma'rib's locals who live in the capital Sana'a to join the Houthis' fighting lines, adding the Houthi initiative is nothing but a political maneuver. The criminal Houthi militia have demolished all aspects of life in Yemen. While children around the world prosper in good education, medical care, have enough time to play and have fun, Yemeni children, however, are sent to the hell of war. To know more about that story is within this report.
Yemen faces the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, with around 21 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, including more than 11 million children. Years of conflict have taken a devastating toll on the education of children in Yemen. They cannot live a normal life like all the other children around the world, and this is due to the Houthi militia criminal actions in Yemen. Access to education provides a sense of normalcy for children, yet more than 2 million school-aged children are now out of school as poverty, conflict, and lack of educational opportunities disperse learning. Children cannot finish their education, which makes them trapped in a self-living cycle of poverty. Out-of-school children should have more attention, because if they aren't properly supported, they may never return to the classroom. Children continue to be killed and injured in the conflict, while the damage and closure of schools and hospitals has dispersed access to education and health services, leaving children even more vulnerable and robbing them of their future and innocency. Meanwhile, nearly 2.3 million children under the age of 5 in Yemen are suffering from severe malnutrition in 2021. Yemeni children should have the basic human rights where they can live their lives safely. Until when will the Yemeni children stay like this?
In a briefing to the United Nations Security Council, the UNICEF warned that millions of children in Yemen are facing a dangerous situation as the malnutrition. The UNICEF chief official said that around 21 million children in Yemen need assistance, including 11.3 million in dire need for life-saving aids. The official added 2.3 million children suffer from malnutrition, while around 400,000 under 5 are on the brink of death due to the same reason. It added that more than 10 million children in Yemen cannot have an access to adequate health care, and that 1.6 million children are displaced. The new school calendar is at door, and the question that troubles most families is whether they are prepared for such challenge, especially with the prices of tuition fees are going high and the limited seats available in government schools. This report sheds light on the situation.
Under extremely difficult economic conditions, due to conflict and local currency drop, the new school calendar starts. However, 3 million children are unable to enroll in schools for poverty and war reasons, a figure that is 50% higher than it was at the beginning of the conflict. Katrina Ritz, head of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Yemen, said that about 3 million children are unable to attend school this year due to conflict. With the start of the school calendar in the country, let's not forget that the conflict has destroyed hundreds of schools and made nearly 3 million children unable to enroll in education this year, she added. Children in Yemen, like all children, need to return to school, while the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF stated 8.1 million Yemeni children need emergency educational assistance, compared to 1.1 million children before the war. With the start of the school year, families were surprised by the high tuition fees as a result of taxes imposed by the Houthi rebels on private schools. Also, many parents were unable to pay late installments to private schools for the previous year, and therefore they will not be able to enroll. Families cannot afford high tuition fees, and schools hold children documents, so it's difficult for them to transfer their children to public schools. In line with that, public schools lack a number of necessities, such as adequate seats, books, and staff, due to large number of students. The pressure on public school is increasing after the private schools raised their fees by nearly 35% compared to the last year. According to the Child Protection Organization, since the outbreak of the conflict in Yemen 2015, the price of 1 month's requirements of wheat flour, cooking oil, beans, and sugar has increased by more than 250%. To 60,000 riyals in July 2021, compared to 17,000 riyals in February 2015. All of these factors are pushing more children to the brink of famine, according to the organization. In a country where more than half of its 30 million people are already facing severe food shortages
and more than 400,000 children under the age of 5 are one step away from starvation. Families are confronted with many economic hurdles with their living conditions and by looking into the future of their children. Challenges in public schools could deprive many children from their right to education.
Coming next. Amid war and economic crisis, the Yemeni rial continues collapsing.
ثالث دي على منطقة الروضة استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع بيدعي للسلام يقول له للسلام يقتل أطفالنا يقاتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت استجبت لأقول معي واحد صاروخ ثاني طلعت البيت حقنا عشان ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ الطرح.
Welcome back. International Monetary Fund announced that it will grant Yemen $665 million to help the country cope with the economic crisis. According to Reuters, the IMF's funding is apart from the special commitments given to the states in order to shore up the monetary reserves. The funding, according to experts, will push up hard currency reserves in Yemen by more than 70% and will ease the difficult economic and humanitarian situation in the country. The majority of Yemeni people bears the consequences and stands alone, unable to confront the ravages of war, division, and the ongoing economic deterioration. Over the past month, the Yemeni rial has declined against foreign currencies to the lowest rate since the war began in March 2015, registering 800 rials to the US dollar, amid international warnings of further declines. More on that story is within this report.
Where the Yemeni rial is heading to? The answer to the question lies within the conflict that escalated about 6 years ago, specifically with Houthi rebels controlling the capital Sana'a. Since then, the rial was not stable. It fluctuated into an upward surge against the US dollar, upping from 214 to a historic 1,000 against the greenback. Economists link the current fall of the rial to the political instability that engulfs the country, along with the failure to resume oil exports and to collect revenues from the state bodies. To help recover the rial, the Yemeni government replaced the central bank governors, shut down exchange firms to put an end to the currency speculation, and provided local traders with the dollar. Also, the government floated the rial to bridge the gap between the official rate and that in the black market, and relocated the central bank headquarters from Sana'a to Aden. This, however, was not enough, with the Houthi rebels banning the use of new banknotes printed by the Yemeni government in Aden and refusing to deposit revenues from Hodeidah seaport and taxes into the central bank in Aden. Now what's next? The Yemeni rial, according to experts, is doomed to plunge more, with pricing skyrocketing as inflation increases. People in Yemen will find it hard to pay for basic food and services, which could spark protests nationwide.
Locals in the countryside of Ib discovered a mass grave that contains 50 bodies. The local residents said that they discovered the mass grave in a mountainous area called El Ayan to the north of Ib. A source in the archaeologist office in Ib added that the mass grave could date back to 120 years ago. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The General People Conference commemorates its 39th anniversary amid shattered political scene. United Nations Security Council accuses Houthi rebels again of blocking peace efforts in Yemen. Houthi rebels continue their war against Yemeni youth and deform innocent childhood. That is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.